Sony has unveiled the Xperia 5 Mark IV, which is shaping as one of the most compact Android flagships on the market. We have had the phone prior to its premiere and we have completed its full review. And while it may be a major spoiler, we can already share that this Xperia 5 Mark IV is an outstanding device that delivers in buckets. It's been more than a year since the Xperia 5 Mark III impressed us, and we are thrilled to meet its successor, the Xperia 5 Mark IV. It improves the screen, performance, camera tech, and quality, and battery capacity. Yet it has shrunk in size. The Xperia 5 Mark IV is the direct successor to the Mark III of the same compact lineage, and it mixes things up a bit in terms of upgrades. Sony has managed to make the phone even more compact, and this comes with certain repercussions. Let's focus on the good news first. The Xperia 5 Mark IV retains many of the great features of its predecessor: the SD card slot, the 3.5mm audio jack, the amazing display, the front-facing stereo speakers. Sony even managed to cram up a bigger battery inside this marginally smaller chassis, plus the necessary coils for the wireless charging system, which is a feat in and for itself. The bad news is that the periscope camera with two separate focal lengths, 70mm and 105mm, is now gone, replaced by a regular 60mm telephoto with the equivalent of 2.5x optical zoom. The retail box is also static, as Sony has gone full eco, no charger or cable inside in the box, but other than that, we have a really solid compact flagship on our hands. Let's dive in. It doesn't get any simpler than that. There's a paper box and a phone inside, nothing more, nothing less. It's all part of Sony's Road to Zero initiative. There's no plastic in the packaging and the box itself is 50% smaller. You can make what you will of it, but this trend is strong in the box community and isn't going away anytime soon. No goodies in the retail box is always sad, but it's a small piece to pay for saving the planet, right? There's one word to describe the design of the Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV: unmistakable. Fans of Xperia phones recognize and cherish this elongated slender design, the lack of notches and cutouts, and symmetrical bezels. The Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV follows in the same footsteps with minor tweaks here and there. For one, the metal frame is now chamfered, with flat main side and slightly curved sides where the frame meets the screen and the black glass. It's not a huge difference when you look at the phone, but in the hand it somehow feels more compact and premium with this small design change. Other than that, it's business as usual for Xperia. 3.5mm audio jack on the top, flappy SIM slot plus SD card slot on the bottom. The left side of the frame is completely clean, and on the right there's the double action shutter button, the power or fingerprint button, and the volume rocker. The pill-shaped camera bump is right where you would expect to find it, on the top left corner at the back. Speaking of the back panel, it's frosted glass, Corning Gorilla Glass Victus, and it's great at fending off fingerprints. The black glossy Sony logo in the center is also quite stylish. All in all, the design looks and feels very premium. The Xperia 5 Mark IV comes in three colors: black, acro white, and green. The acro white is one that I like the most. It's creamy white, similar to my favorite car paint, Honda's Championship white color. The green option also looks classy, but of course nothing beats the classic black when it comes to style. The Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV sports a 6.1-inch AMOLED display with Full HD Plus resolution and Sony's trademark 21:9 aspect ratio. Again, there's some bad news and some good news. The panel is great. It's one of the brightest, most accurate displays we have ever measured. Sony boasts a 50% increase in peak brightness, and we measured 1019 nits, which is right there at the top of our chart. If you want color accuracy, there's the creator mode setting. It offers almost perfectly calibrated colors, warm and natural hues, great for creators. You can choose to boost colors with the standard mode, and you can also fine-tune the white balance. The bad news is that this isn't an LTPO panel, and even though it offers 120Hz, there are only two options, 60Hz and the said 120Hz. There's no dynamic mode to switch automatically between the two either. What's even more frustrating is that when the phone gets hot, the display defaults to 60Hz, and it gets hot quite often courtesy of the tightly packed internals. So the display itself is amazing, but the way it's managed and driven, not so much. The camera system on the back of the Xperia 5 Mark IV consists of 3 lenses with 3 sensors underneath. Gone is the periscope variable zoom lens from the previous model, and in its place we find a regular 60mm zoom lens. Now the logic behind this has to do with the physical size of the phone and the bigger battery, at least on paper. On the other hand, the Xperia 5 Mark III is just 1mm wider and another millimeter taller than its successor. It's mainly down to the bigger battery than 500 mAh more is substantial upgrade. Don't get me wrong, I take battery upgrades very positively. To me, it is the most important quality of life improvement in any smartphone. The thing is, this new 60mm camera is not spectacular, it's not bad, just a downgrade compared to the 70mm to 105mm variable zoom system in the previous model. Sony keeps using focal length when describing its camera systems, which will make photography enthusiasts happy. The main camera is a 24mm lens with an aperture of 1.7 and a 12MP 1x1.7-inch sensor underneath and optical image stabilization on board. The ultra-wide camera is a 16mm and 2.2 aperture 12MP and a smaller sensor 1x2.5-inch. All bells and whistles from the alpha department are here, with some extras on top. You have real-time eye tracking, autofocus on all lenses, object tracking. You can spend all day talking about different aspects of the Photo Pro app or Cinema Pro, Videography Pro, the whole professional suite that Sony is so proud of. And in all honesty, if there's a brand that deserves the Pro moniker on its phones, it's Sony. Thing is, very few people would have the patience and dedication needed to go through all these details when taking shots. Hardcore photography enthusiasts, semi or professional vloggers, etc., normal people would prefer to click on the amazing double action shutter button. I can't believe only Sony is doing it, must be patented and get a great picture. Sony knows all this, and even though Photography Pro is the default camera software, it launches in basic mode and gives you a trimmed down experience while keeping all the professional and cool stuff happening in the background. Actually, every time your Xperia 5 screen locks up, the camera defaults back to this basic mode, even if you have just set up your perfect manual shot. I was doing it to complain about the approach, but there's an option in the camera menu to use the last setting used. Images from the main camera and the ultra-wide are pretty good, with lots of detail and good dynamic range and similar tonality. The 60mm telephoto lens, on the other hand, tends to overexposed shots that the colors turn out warmer. It's a new lens or sensor combination for Sony and obviously needs more tweaking to get it perfectly right. If you are shooting in basic or auto mode, the algorithms will inevitably decide on the screen and the settings, and they work quite well. Night mode activates automatically when there's not enough light, and if you have a steady hand, you can get some good results. The Xperia 5 Mark IV can shoot up to 4K videos, but the 1080p at 60 fps is the best looking option. You have both OIS and EIS, and the end result looks much smoother with good detail and accurate colors. You can switch between lenses while shooting, and even though there's a nice zoom in zoom out effect, it's primarily digital and there's a loss of focus during the transition. Object tracking and eye tracking autofocus work as advertised. One of the big improvements over the previous model is the new front camera, which is now 12 megapixel and with a slightly larger sensor. You can also use bokeh to make sure your selfies look more professional. The results are pretty decent, much better than what was possible with the last gen model. Sony has obviously decided to go the plus road when it comes to the latest Snapdragon. The Xperia 5 Mark IV comes with the regular Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 on board. It's not a big deal, the phone feels snappy enough and the synthetic benchmarks put it right where it belongs, in the elite. The performance is actually almost identical to the Xperia 1 Mark IV, which is great considering the smaller chassis. Speaking of which, the phone gets quite hot quite often, and from time to time the camera would shut down or the display would switch back to 60Hz. The storage configuration is 8GB of RAM coupled with 128GB of onboard storage, but there's a microSD card slot, so you can expand the latter with up to 1TB. The side-mounted fingerprint scanner deserves a few words here. Sadly, it's not the fastest one out there, but it's pretty accurate. You may get some false activations if the phone is loose in your pocket, but overall it's an improvement over the previous model. The Xperia 5 Mark IV comes with Android 12 on board and there's little to no bloatware present. Actually, you can choose what to install when you set up the phone initially and the overall experience is close to stock. SiteSense is still here for those who don't know anything about it. It's a shortcut stripe close to the edge of the display which you activate by tapping twice on it. You can launch apps, take screenshots, view notifications and also multitask via the 21:9 multi-window feature. Sony somehow managed to cram up a 5000 mAh battery in the compact chassis of the Xperia 5 Mark IV, which is one of the most important upgrades compared to the previous model. The battery life is solid, you can get 2 days quite easily, and even the most demanding power users will have their full day of tinkering with the Xperia 5 Mark IV. Another big improvement is the addition of wireless charging. Sony somehow found the space to slap a wireless charging coil in there. The wired charging support caps at 30 watt, and according to Sony you can fill 50% of the battery in 30 minutes using these speeds. Here's the charging profile we were able to snapshot. We achieved 20% in 15 minutes, 40% in 30 minutes, 50% in 45 minutes, and full charge at 110 minutes. It's really hard to compete with a phone that has a 21:9 aspect ratio screen, microSD card slot, 3.5mm audio jack, and a cool bunch of professional apps. On the other hand, it's amazingly easy. Let me elaborate. People who want all these features are probably already on the Xperia train, and with that being said, the main competitors here are the Xperia 1 Mark IV and the Xperia 5 Mark III. The former offers a true variable zoom camera system and later is cheaper and with a more flexible camera system while keeping the compact form factor. For everybody else, the nerdy stuff is not that important, and with a price tag of $1,100 for the Xperia 5 IV is up for a bumpy ride. That kind of money will buy you pretty much every major flagship phone out there, bearing those with flexible screens. Actually, you can get the Z Flip 4 for less. And there you have it, the unmistakable Sony experience. It's radically different from anything you have seen if you have never tried an Xperia phone before. That is, this is a superhero undercover, ready to swap its tuxedo for a Superman costume and save the day. You just have to know which buttons to press. The Xperia 5 Mark IV is a great phone for Sony fans, professional and semi-professional content creators, and people who like to go against the grain. If you are feeling adventurous or you want to switch your phone experience to something new and fresh, The Xperia 5 Mark IV can do this for you, but at a price, a 4-digit price to be exact.